Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. A century ago, H.L. Mencken said, "The most dangerous man to any government is the man who's able to think things out without regard to prevailing superstitions and taboos." Almost inevitably, he comes to the conclusion that the government he lives under is dishonest, insane, and intolerable. More recently, Theodore Dalrymple said, "In my study of communist societies, I came to the conclusion that the purpose of communist propaganda was not to persuade, not to convince, not to inform, but to humiliate, and therefore the less it corresponded to reality, the better." I entered the climate discussion in 2008, the same year when Barack Obama was elected president. Obama made it clear during the 2008 campaign that his goal was to bankrupt fossil fuel companies and make energy prices skyrocket.
Whatever technologies are out there that are being presented, whatever power plants that are being built, that they would have to meet the rigors of that market and the ratcheted down caps that are imposed every year. So if somebody wants to build a coal-powered plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they're going to be charged a huge sum for all that greenhouse gas that's being emitted.
Under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. Even, regardless of what I say about whether coal is good or bad, because I'm capping greenhouse gases, coal-powered plants, natural gas, you name it, whatever the plants were, whatever the industry was, they would have to retrofit their operations. That will cost money. They will pass that money on to consumers.
Obama was extremely successful in these efforts, creating a $5,200 inflation tax per family this year. The inflation is a direct result of high energy prices, which trace back to Obama, as I'll explain in a minute. High energy prices are the most regressive of all taxes because they affect the poor and middle class much more than they affect the rich. The Obama-Biden inflation tax might be 1/3 or 1/4 of a poor family's annual income. High energy prices make it very difficult to heat their homes during the winter or cool their homes during the summer. The White House is crushing poor people, but the propaganda reads that they're doing this to help the poor. They say they're freezing and starving the poor in order to save them from future global warming. Now let's look at the mechanism of how these high energy prices have been created. 60 years ago, there was unanimous consensus among scientists that the world was getting colder. New York Times, January 30th, 1961. Scientists agree world is colder. An assembly of specialists from several continents seems to have reached unanimous agreement that the world is getting colder. There were different theories about why Earth was getting colder, but nobody disagreed that it was. From Norway, it was reported that Norway's glaciers were becoming thicker for the first time after 200 years of melting. By 1974, there was unanimous agreement that global cooling threatened world food supplies and could lead to mass starvation. There were other serious environmental issues going on during the 1960s. This is what New York looked like in 1965. The air and water in much of the United States was filthy. In 1965, there was a terrible drought in the Midwest and northeastern United States. New York City almost ran out of water. During the 1960s, I used to visit my grandparents on Long Island during the summer. I remember signs in the restaurant in 1965 which read, "Water by request only." President Johnson sent a message to Congress. This generation has altered the composition of the atmosphere on a global scale through radioactive materials and a steady increase in carbon dioxide from the burning of fossil fuels. Entire regional airsheds, crop plant environments, and river basins are heavy with noxious materials. Motor vehicles and home heating plants, municipal dumps, and factories continually hurl pollutants into the air we breathe. In 1965, President Johnson became the first Democratic president to conflate carbon dioxide with toxins. Carbon dioxide forms the basis of all life, and humans exhale 40,000 parts per million carbon dioxide every second. So President Johnson became the first president to define the human race as being a toxic waste source. Now let's fast forward to 2009, which was Obama's first year in office. The Environmental Protection Agency, which is accountable only to the president, declared carbon dioxide to be a toxin. This made it possible for the Environmental Protection Agency to shut down entire industries like coal and cause energy prices to skyrocket, which is what Obama promised he would do in 2008. But this week, the United States Supreme Court took away the EPA's ability to shut down entire industries. The Supreme Court is supporting science and rejecting the nonsensical claim that carbon dioxide is a toxin. The Supreme Court is also supporting the poor and middle class by making it more difficult for Democrats to crush them with high energy prices. So let's look at how Democrats and the left responded to the Supreme Court decision. The Atlantic said, the Supreme Court's EPA ruling is going to be very, very expensive. So according to the Atlantic, low-cost energy is very, very expensive. Which takes us back to what Dalrymple said. The purpose of communist propaganda was not to persuade or convince, not to inform, but to humiliate, and therefore the less it corresponded to reality, the better. Toto realized 14 years ago that this so-called debate about climate had nothing to do with science. It was about propaganda and other agendas. You can visit Toto, Kyrie Caesar, Upland Toki on the web at realclimatescience.com.